So welcome to this episode of Know Your Neighbor, and today we are literally meeting one of my neighbors, Virginia Merriam, who I recently found out is a stained glass artist. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you, Patty. I've been interested in stained glass pretty much my entire life. I have a small little pink lampshade on a lamp base that was at my nightstand my entire life growing up, and it turned out my grandfather built it for me when my mother was pregnant with me. So I've had a cute little stained glass pink lampshade growing up. And when I first got my first job out of college, I actually commuted back and forth past Camilla Stained Glass in upstate New York. And just every day driving past, I said that would be fun. So one day I stopped and figured I needed a hobby. And they gave lessons and taught supplies and everything. So I picked it up. Yeah, I have a software program on my computer. And it allows me to freeform draw whatever I want to in the program. It's basically almost a connect the dots kind of thing. You put the dots where you want them to go and draw the pattern you want. And then you can use the flood fill feature to actually fill in the glass that you're going to be using for the project, so you can tell your customers or your friends or family exactly what it's going to look like before you actually cut any glass or get involved with anything. Alright, well, glass comes in sheet form. One of the first questions that I tend to get from people when they say, "Oh, you make stained glass?" is, "How do you stain the glass?" The answer is I don't. I buy the sheet with whatever colors I particularly need for my project. And one of the first questions on how to build a project is, how do you transfer your pattern that you have printed out on paper onto the actual glass? There's a couple methods for that. Some of the people like to do is you'll take your piece of paper, put your glass on top of it, and backlight it using some form of a light table like I have over here. Then you can use a marker and trace out whatever pattern you want, take it off the table, and then actually cut based around that pattern. I prefer to actually cut out the pattern pieces and glue them down just with a glue stick.
Awesome.
So now I've cut out these pattern pieces, and I'm going to glue them down onto the glass using just a regular Elmer's glue. Everything else is unnecessary. You just need it to stick long enough to cut out the piece and also to grind down any edges that you need to grind down. Alright, next step from this is to cut it out. There's a variety of cutters in existence, but this one is mine. This is a pistol grip cutter. You just hold it and run it along the glass. What you're actually doing, you're not really cutting the glass, you're scoring the glass. You're making a fine crack in the top surface of the glass, and then you're persuading the glass to break the way you want it to break. So the tip of this cutter actually has a carbide wheel on it at a pretty sharp angle. So all we're going to do is run it along the edge of the pattern, and you'll hear a nice sound that it'll make when it's So there's several tools here available for helping you actually break the glass, but for something this big, you probably can't see it, but there's a score mark running all the way down the piece of glass. You can actually break it by hand.
Oh, what?
So instead of using your hands, if you're afraid of bleeding, all you have to do is squeeze with the pliers. So the two tools that I have over here are a grinder and a ring saw. You grind the edge up until the pattern piece and then stop so that it fits with all the other pieces. There we go. Ground. Next up, get the paper off. It just involves a little bit of water. It's Elmer's glue, so it'll just come right off. These are some of the cut pieces for the pattern that we're going to be putting together. Alright, so we have our ground pieces of glass here. And now we're going to switch to the foiling process. This copper foil is actually, this is the method that Tiffany actually developed. Prior to that, you used lead cane when you're actually making anything out of stained glass. Done. Use one of these plastic burnishers, and all you do is run it along the edge of the glass, on the top and along the sides, to make sure that it's completely flattened into place, so there's no chance that the foil is actually going to lift on you during any of this process. That's fun.
Pays to have it handmade.
Next for this is soldering. So we have a panel over here that is partially in process. So what I've set up here is actually a ceiling tile, because this is heat proof to a certain extent. So what I can do is I can solder on it and it's not actually going to burn through in any way. And what I have down here is a piece of paper which is called the cartoon, which is the original pattern piece for the piece that I'm working on. And I have used these little angle iron border pieces to actually set up and make sure that I am consistent. So iron is heated up. So what I have here is a little bowl and a little bit of stained glass flux. This is what it's going to actually allow the solder to stick, because if I try and put solder on here without any flux, the solder is going to go wherever it wants to and it's not going to stick to anything. Let's take the brush and brush on some flux on all of the copper that I'm going to be soldering. So this is solder right here. So solder in one hand, iron in the other. Just now flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Now we have one panel of our 6-panel lamp completed. So the next steps involved in this are you finish the other 5 panels, and what you do is you lay out the panels and you butt them panel to panel to panel to panel, so you have a C shape of glass panels. And then you go a little bit crazy with electrical tape. And then because electrical tape will actually stretch when you're working with it, you can take the entire thing, grab the center of it, and pull everything up into a 3-dimensional shape so that the final end of the C actually ends up meeting over here. Okay. Then you can tape the whole thing together and then tack solder down the seams so that it'll actually stay in that shape. And then what actually goes on top is the vase cap. And these are made of brass. And what you do is you tin it, which means you get it really hot, you put a bunch of flux on it, and you cover it in solder. This is what actually connects to the lamp base, and this is what actually supports the entire structure.
Now I noticed on some of your work now that you're doing this very personalized, unique filigree. Can you talk about that a little bit?
This is interesting because on the first piece that I ever made, the little hot air balloon that's there's some wire ropes that connect the basket to the actual balloon. So I ended up purchasing tinned wire for that. I had a spool of it, and I decided one day to just kind of curl it and see what happened. So I just take a couple pairs of pliers and curl it into little swirls and make a little swirl for it, and that's what I did for this filigree lamp that's over here. So what this lamp is actually going to end up being is 5 of the 6 panels are going to have normal scroll work filigree built into them, and then the last panel is actually going to have a monogram of a new couple. This is a wedding present. So this is Dan and Amanda's monogram with the little hearts. So
that's going to be beautiful, and they're going to treasure that forever.
Hopefully.
Well, I've certainly learned a lot about stained glass. It's as involved as I thought, and even a bit more. But it's nice to see a project go from start to finish, and also to have the flexibility to create your own designs and make presents that are very meaningful for people. So you must have a great sense of satisfaction.
I do, absolutely. It's very nice to walk into my friends and family's homes and say, I made that. But they still enjoy them.